Welcome to Travel Stories with your hosts, Trevor Mountcastle and Tom Kim. This week, we talk the Maldives, whether it's the 5-star famine episode, the I've blown my budget episode, or the I can't believe the Maldives is actually pretty good episode. We'll figure out what the real title is by the end. But Tom, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. Happy to be here. Happy to have a little fun getting to hear about the Maldives, one of my favorite places.
Indeed it is. So I wanted to try to do this a little bit differently because I wanted to try to keep all the Maldives stuff all together. And from what I read, if you bury the lead a little bit and you put the Maldives stuff or, the exciting stuff at the end of the episode, people listen to the beginning of it. So I thought we'd kind of cover the flights, do the trip report in a little bit different way where we cover the flights to and from. And then we can spend the majority of the time kind of talking through the Maldives because I got to tell you, I just fell in love. I mean, I came back from this trip.
Whoa. I thought you were going to do that later in the episode.
I will. But I'm just going to say, I came back from this trip with so much energy because I was able to actually regenerate and relax.
Well, let's hear about the flights first because you're changing things up, right? We're doing flights first.
We are, yeah. So this was a different way for us to travel. One of my doctors just happened to randomly say, "Oh yeah, I love flying out of Newark. I just hop on the train from Baltimore and up to Newark I go." So we tried actually training it up to Newark, and it actually worked out really well. It's probably a mix between whether it was more cost effective or less cost effective, just because 2 or 3 seats on a train versus one rental car. But I was actually surprised at how well Amtrak shone just for that short Baltimore, Washington, I should say, to Newark Airport. It goes right to the airport, too.
Yeah, I forget how close that Amtrak station is to Newark and how actually it is kind of a choice for kind of intermodal transport. Back in the day, right, they had those ZFV, right, code share or whatever, essentially on Amtrak, where you could book a ticket, on United from ZFV, and which was actually one of the stations in Philadelphia.
I'm sure our listeners will correct us, but I think it was like the 13th Street Station or something to that effect in Philly.
Exactly. And so, I don't know if those still exist. I haven't thought to even look for a flight from that IATA code in a long time. But, back in the day, you could book those Amtrak flights, and have, if I'm not mistaken, you could actually kind of, not skip lag that Amtrak segment too. And it kind of worked.
Yeah, I can attest that ZFV still comes up on United, or at least did last time I tried it. But I don't know that I found any exceptional fares.
Yeah, probably not.
But that's probably a conversation for another time.
But yeah, glad that the Amtrak transit worked for you. It's an interesting one.
It was. Unfortunately, because of just our lack of comfort with the timing of trains and trusting of trains, I have a trust issue. We ended up overnighting at the Renaissance Newark, which was completely unremarkable. Not unremarkable overnight for the trip. And then we flew the second longest Singapore flight. I think it's the second longest commercially operated flight because I think JFK is something like 15 miles longer. But we flew Newark to Singapore. And the experience compared to the JFK flight was night and day. And
interesting.
It was for one single reason. You want to guess what that reason was?
Bulkhead?
Yes. In my opinion, if you're flying Singapore's I call it old business class, but I suppose it might be any of their business class. It is bulkhead or bust. For those that have flown Singapore business, most of the business class seats, you have this small little cubby hole. And the intent is that the seat folds forward flat. It doesn't kind of lay back like most business class seats. And the idea is that you lay kind of slanted, right?
Mm-hmm. Diagonal.
Yeah, diagonal. Just like what you would with a reverse herringbone seat, except that you've got a lot more shoulder room, so to speak. But your foot room is maybe 1.5 feet wide. It's something really, really tiny. If you have the bulkhead seat, your footwell is the entire width of your seat. It is better than most first class seats. And when you've got a lap infant, it makes all the difference. Even without the lap infant, it makes all the difference. It literally felt like flying first class.
Now, do they have more than one bulkhead in business on a, what is it, an A350? Is that what they were flying?
Yeah, I think it's the A350-900 ULR, I think is the official one. Mm-hmm. And I believe they had 2 bulkheads in business class And then they had a bulkhead and premium economy, but I barely looked back there. I would have felt bad. I mean, I just like, I know people that have done that flight in premium economy,
It's
and
a
more
long
power
flight.
to them, but
It's a
that's a
long flight.
long flight.
That's a long flight.
This aircraft was almost full. I think there might have been like one business class seat open. This was a completely full flight in advance of the Singapore Night Grand Prix. And so having those seats were really clutch.
At least there was no economy on those planes, right? I mean, at least premium economy is the lowest class.
If there was economy, that might have been war crimes. I'm just going to say it. I mean, I'm sure United would figure out how to do it, but I think Singapore's too kind.
Well, and I think they do. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure there is economy on nonstop US to Singapore flights on United.
But they fly San Francisco, right? Do they do LA as well or no?
I forget which ones they fly from. I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, I'm pretty sure they're just on 787s, right? And they've got economy.
Yeah, they are definitely just 787s. They probably have to. Okay, now I want to research to see if they use a special aircraft or not. I don't remember any word about that. So yeah. I assume they haven't. I don't even remember like Seth or the Dutchlands destination folks talking about blocking out seats or anything.
Maybe they don't need it it is shorter distance, right, from the West Coast, I guess.
It is from San Francisco. I think from LA, I thought LA was like the third or fourth or fifth longest commercially operated flight to Singapore. So I'm rusty. I swear, like the pandemic, I'm still recovering in my AvGeek knowledge for some of the stuff, just with those things canceled. But, just to wrap up the Singapore flight, bulkhead or bust. Book the cook. The food's amazing. The service is amazing. The flight attendants were fantastic with our daughter. The flight attendants were fantastic with us. The IFE, IFE is really hit or miss. And this trip, I think IFE was just really miss. I mean, there was enough to entertain you, but there was nothing to get really excited about. But that could also just be because there's not a lot of exciting content out there right now.
So what do you think? Would you do a stopover in Frankfurt if you were to do it again? Or do you like the fact that it's nonstop all the way from New York to Singapore?
So my wife and I discussed this one, and I think if we were going to do this again, we would do the JFK flight. So the Newark flight leaves at like 10 a.m. in the morning, and the JFK flight, I think, leaves at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. The difference is you arrive at 5 p.m. if you take the 10 o'clock in the morning departure out of Newark. You arrive at like 5 or 10 a.m. if you take the JFK night flight. So the night flight, you get to get your day of work in, you pop over to JFK, and if you've got that bulkhead seat, you're going to get really good sleep. And so you get really good sleep, you can start your day in Singapore. And if your destination isn't Singapore, you got a couple hour layover and you're to wherever you want to be. And you're there before evening. So you're already acclimated to the time zone of which you're there. Like even if you wanted to do the Maldives, you would land at like somewhere between 7 and 10 a.m. And then you could take, it might be earlier, and you might be able to take a flight from Singapore. I have to check because they have a noon flight out. So I don't know if that JFK flight would perfectly connect in there. But, you can get to a lot of places, I would say, if you took that JFK night flight.
You like the timing better? Although, I'll be honest, getting there at 5 p.m. might not be a horrible thing from a jet lag perspective. You can just get to the hotel, eat your dinner and then, kind of fall asleep. And that might not be horrible for jet lag either.
If you're arriving in Singapore, yes. Yeah. I agree with that statement.
If your destination is Singapore.
And that's why we ended up booking it originally, because we were going to go to the Singapore Night Grand Prix, but we ended up having to vector elsewhere. So yeah, if you're connecting, the JFK flight's better. If you're arriving into Singapore and that's your destination, I think Newark is probably preferable.
So did you fly Singapore to the Maldives or did you take another flight?
Yeah, so we tagged on a separate itinerary, 3-hour layover in Singapore. They had Piper Heidsieck this time instead of Tattinger in the lounge, so we were a little disappointed there. But just wonderful food. For just a generic business class lounge, it was just wonderful. And then we had a 787-10 for the 5-hour flight to Maldives.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay, so it's an all Singapore flight to the Maldives. Now, do you want to talk about your flight back now?
Yeah, just to knock out the non-intra Maldives flights. We ended up having 3 different itineraries. One way was back via Singapore, and then Etihad via Singapore, Abu Dhabi, and home. That was 272,000 Air Canada miles, Aeroplan miles. And that was going to be first class from Abu Dhabi home. And we just felt like that was a little too expensive. And it would have been 5 hours in economy on Singapore to get to Singapore, plus 2 additional hotel nights that were going to be like short nights. That just wasn't. Yeah, it didn't feel like the kind of.
Yeah, it's forcing it a bit.
Yeah, it didn't feel like the experience you wanted after a relaxing trip.
Hmm.
The second one was 210,000 American miles that I had booked before the Australia award space bonanza.
Is that per person or is that for both of you?
That was for all three of us because
Okay.
the way that they charge for infants would have been, I think, $800 or $1,000. And so I said, well, 70,000 American miles is a better deal.
Hmm.
And so we were going to have our daughter have her own seat, and it would have
Okay,
been
got it. The three of you. Okay.
Etihad. It would have been Etihad short night, and then Abu Dhabi to Dulles, and that would have been in all business. But
Mhm.
with the bonanza of award space and a couple of sprinklings, here and there, it was no longer tenable. It was no longer palatable for us to take that option. We have a very strong desire to get back to Australia and New Zealand, and that's a family priority. So we felt we had to find another way.
Okay.
So found Virgin Atlantic availability from none other than Mumbai, India. Didn't really have India on our list to bring our daughter to before she turned 2, but the award availability was there. The fuel surcharges were pretty steep, but there was a little bit of a travel hacker cred that I just couldn't leave on the table. So we booked a round trip. We're going back mid next year. And because we started it as our daughter is under 2, we paid the infant price, all the taxes and fees and stuff, but only the miles of an infant. And the way back, she will have her own seat at no additional miles or no additional costs. So they actually provisioned her seat, which I'll get to was why, because this itinerary was complicated, it ended up creating some problems at check-in. But she'll have her own seat when we go back. I don't know if she'll
were you
even
able to
earn
book that
miles.
online? I mean, like, did you have to call and they somehow create the record or something for the second seat, or how does that work?
I spent about 2 hours on the phone. It was a complicated effort, a lot of waiting on hold, but I got a stellar CSR that knew exactly what she needed to do. And she walked me through the process. She's like, okay, so first I'm going to do this.
So it's a
Then I'm going
hack
to
with
book
effort.
you.
Doesn't exactly come easy, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a hack so much as it's completely publicized. This is what they do.
You're just utilizing their rules. And the problem, I guess, is it's probably not commonly utilized rule that people need to know how to do it.
Exactly. So we booked a revenue ticket from Maldives to Mumbai on Vistara. That's, I think, a Tata and Singapore partnership airline. Perfectly nice. I had gotten an email that said, hey, why don't you upgrade your experience to premium economy? I'd bought all 3 seats for us just because it was so cheap. Used a Capital One venture.
How much was the upgrade?
Upgrade was $200.
Oh, that's not bad at all. Per person or for all 3 of you?
Oh, no. For all 3.
Oh, wow. That's a no-brainer. Go ahead and do it.
Exactly. And the original flights, I think, were, I don't know, like 150. So, you figure what's that, 350 for premium economy for a 3 or 4 hour flight?
Yeah, not bad at all.
And just given where we were flying and from where we were flying, we wanted that, just that extra comfort. We couldn't upgrade online, ended up upgrading at the terminal. And it was just one of those things where I just happened to say, hey, any chance of an upgrade? And they had the same price. And I was like, okay, great. It errored out every time I tried to do it online, but at least this works. And had we not done that, we would have been hurting puppies because we got off that plane and there were like 2 or 3 golf carts, multi-row seaters that airports usually have. And one of them, as we walked out, is like waving people down, and like one couple in front of us just walked on. And I said, is there a cost? Because not that I was cheap. I was running out of cash after being in the Maldives. And they're like, no, it's free. So we hopped on and they saved us an easy 10 to 20 minutes of walking. It was a long way. I mean, it was probably an 8-minute drive to get to where they dropped us off to be able to get to the customs hall. So had we not had that premium economy seat, we wouldn't have had the availability because we were the last golf cart to go. So, small little things. Overnight at Mumbai, checking in took about 40 minutes because they didn't know what the heck to do with our daughter's ticket.
You have to be complicated, Trevor. Have to be complicated.
So finally, they ended up just writing out a handwritten ticket. It's only the second time I've gotten a handwritten boarding pass.
Like carbon copy and all? Like, was it the red carbon copy or something?
It was the thicker weight, but it was just all handwritten.
Okay, got it.
And they sent a team member to escort us through security to make sure that security let us get through. And we actually used the paper tickets in London as well. So we flew Mumbai, London, Dulles in upper class.
Was this your first Virgin flight or have you flown Virgin before?
First Virgin flight in upper class.
Oh, your Virgin class,
Yeah.
Virgin flight.
And it was an interesting one. So before we actually got on the plane, Mumbai doesn't seem to have many airport or airline lounges. They have a couple of like generic lounges, which were actually pretty stellar. Wonderful food spread, got a foot massage for free,
Oh, okay.
with tip. They actually had a separate area that was for first class passengers with Moet Chandon, Imperial, and table service. So it appeared to me that like even Emirates used them. So
Mhm.
don't know what the story is of Mumbai not having, airline specific lounges, but their lounge
So,
situation.
but the contract lounge is pretty nice, is what you're telling me. The one that
Yeah,
came with Virgin upper class.
surprisingly nice. I have to say, surprisingly nice. On board, those seats are tight. Like, I made the mistake.
The notorious herringbone seats, or are these a different kind?
They were the notorious herringbone seats.
Wow. Okay.
We were on a 787-9.
Okay.
I made the mistake. We got like the last seats available because we booked this so close in. And so we're, back toward the bar. The bar wasn't the problem. It was the storage area because, the bar takes up some of the overhead storage. And we had a bunch of stuff. I mean, we're team carry-on. Ended up stowing everything, trying to get comfortable in these rather tight seats. Because we're on the K side, we're staring at the people in the middle. Like, I don't understand who, I don't even, like, this is an old product and they keep putting it on aircraft. I don't get it.
Well, they
who wants to stare?
They did stop a couple of years ago, but it's, the problem is still haven't cycled through. I mean, they still got 787s with these, 330s with these. I think some of the newer 787s and the 350s have different seats, but
I've heard this, but it just boggles my mind. I mean, 787 is a fairly new aircraft and you put this seat on.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, it's been around for a little while.
Fair. But anyway, so here we are, we're staring at people. Yeah. And this one mother-daughter pair get into their middle seats a little bit ahead of us. And my bag happened to be over the mother's seat. She was not very happy about this. Now, she didn't know it was me, but she was very particular that the bin over my seat is mine.
Mm-hmm.
She was ready to put a plaque on it. I'm pretty convinced of this.
Did you have a lot of stuff to stow, or was just the concept?
No, it was just a concept. I mean, half the bin was empty. She kept her purse down in front of her feet, and she had a smaller carry-on bag. And her daughter was the same way. So it was literally just the principle of the matter. And so
I hate people like that. They deserve a special level of hell for those people.
And she kept giving me the stink eye too, because I had flagged the flight attendant down. I said, "Hey,
back."
Oh, I did. And I said to the flight attendant, I said, "That's my bag. If you've got another place for it, it can go anywhere on this plane. I don't really care. I just, if that settles that woman down, that's enough for me." And the flight attendant was so thankful and just, politely did it. She's like, "In principle, I will never do that."
Right.
She said to me, "But you volunteered it, and I appreciate the fact that you did." This woman didn't give up, and ultimately the purser had to pull her up to the forward galley to settle her down, and then started placating her with alcohol.
Oh, okay.
Like literally, have you had a pre-departure beverage? Here, how about two? She was doing what she could, and that just seemed to be like the vibe of this particular flight. It was my first experience. I was sort of like, wow, this is kind of weird. Food was interesting.
What does that mean exactly? Interesting.
I had a Cobb salad appetizer, and that was fine.
Uh-huh.
The main meal reminded me, do you remember and we'll include this in the show notes, do you remember the Virgin Atlantic most hilarious complaint letter that Richard Branson's ever gotten?
I don't think I do.
So it was a flight from India to the UK, I think. And it was just very comical. We'll include the link in the show notes, but it includes photos of the food that's barely recognizable. And it's like, Richard, this is a catastrophe of culinary distaste. Something of that. That's not a direct quote.
Must have been a British customer.
Oh, it had to have been. It was hilarious. So I had gotten the least spicy according to what they told us, from a spice perspective. And I had one bite and I was done.
Did they not have a Western option? They didn't have a Western option for you?
No, they did not have a.
Interesting. It was all Indian options?
It was all Indian options.
Wow. That's surprising on an international carrier. Usually they for that exact reason, some people are just more sensitive to that. I mean, I think Trevor is one of those people. I think he is definitely a little sensitive to a spice. So I think, having a Western option that is maybe more catered to people with less or with more sensitivity to that, it's probably a good idea. But anyway.
Yeah, but I survived, made it to the Virgin Clubhouse in London, ended up flying a few hours later to Dulles, made the worst mistake I could have of the entire trip.
Oh, what's that?
We skipped dinner
Uh-huh.
and we went to sleep immediately upon getting far enough in the air to recline.
Okay.
And it was just not recline, but to fold the seat forward. It was the worst choice I could have made because I slept for 6 hours, 7 hours, woke up hungry, and all of us were so jet lagged that at 2 a.m., so this flight arrives at 11:30 in the evening into Dulles. We got like 1 or 2 hours of sleep, and then we were wide awake. And so it's Saturday morning, and we're wide awake at 2 a.m. as Ophelia is coming in, and we're like, "What are we going to do?" And then we proceeded to have the same problem on Sunday morning. Like we extended our jet lag like nobody's business. Like this was like a noob mistake.
Yeah.
But overall, I guess I'd say Virgin Atlantic was fine, and the flight attendant that I helped out on that first flight happened to introduce what fine actually means, at least as she says it: feelings inside not expressed.
Well, but it sounds like you had really good cabin crew, which has always been my experience. Like I've never, I think, had bad Virgin cabin crew, and I've flown them now in several classes actually, because I've definitely flown them upper class. I've flown them economy. Actually, lately has been mostly in economy, and they're all very friendly and they're extremely nice. And again, I find them among the most helpful and kind of genuine, warm kind of flight crew that's out there.
I would agree with that assessment. I totally would agree with that.
Helps make up for the lousy seats in business class, at least on a 330 or I guess some 787s.
Yeah. Well, we're giving them another shot on the way back. But
hopefully, you have some better equipment.
That reminds me, I need to go in and change our seats because I had all our seats in K, and that is just not going to fly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if it's that herringbone seat, yeah, you definitely want to be in the A. The first.
Yeah, I think it's the A.
Yep. So I guess those are the flights. I guess now we can. Are we moving to the main event?
I think it is the main event, the Maldives.
Is it Maldives time? Wow.
So I have to say, you've been there, what, 4 times?
I have, in a variety of different places. And yeah, I love it. I love the Maldives. I would definitely go back again.
Nothing you've ever told me, and obviously you've been nothing but positive about the Maldives. Nothing that you ever told me could have prepared me for this experience.
Yeah, we've talked about the Maldives, and it's a pretty divisive place, right? There are lots of people that are like, I'm never going to the Maldives, or, why would I need to go that far away to experience, kind of a beach vacation when, there's Caribbean's right next door, or maybe Hawaii or something like that. But you're right. It's one of those places where you don't know until you know, right?
And that's exactly the thing. I was the guy who was skeptical. I was like, well, why am I going to go all this way? And the reason we did it is because it was going to be cheaper now than after our daughter turned 2. And so we ended up, because we arrived late, we took the boat over to the Sheraton for one night.
Mm-hmm.
That was okay. The only thing I would say about that is if you're going to go to the Maldives, the Sheraton is a waypoint. It is not your destination.
And I know
it's
the same thing.
I know it's cheap. But don't fall into that lull. The Sheraton is not a Maldivian experience. I mean, it's all right, but it's not why you're flying halfway around the world.
Yeah. If all you're going to experience is the Sheraton, then yeah, it's probably not enough given the distance, the cost, the expense of time and money. You will leave not having experienced enough, I think, if you just do the Sheraton. And again, there's nothing wrong with the Sheraton. I've stayed at that Sheraton too, and much the same scenario where the beauty of the Sheraton is it is so close to the airport that you do not need to hop another plane to get there, where almost all the other resorts you have to hop another plane in order to get to that resort. And as a result, it's nice for, just an overnight, because the other options for you in Malair can be a little bbit dicey. And I've stayed in one of those too, and I could talk about that. But in any case, it's not a bad place if you need an overnight before kind of your main event resort, island resort.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And when you talk main event, the moment that we stepped foot back on Malé, it just felt like we had stepped into a new world. The airport butler for the St. Regis, we stayed at the St. Regis Maldives Vommuli Island, was there to welcome us by name. There were 2 of us. There were 2 couples, or well, one family, us, and then a couple. and one butler for the couple, one butler for us, escorted us over to get the Trans-Maldivian Airways, escorted us to the seaplane. In the process of escorting us over to the seaplane terminal, which is brand new, only opened a year ago, they just, slip in little things like, how would you like us to refer to you? Do you want to be Mr. Mountcastle? Do you want to be Trevor? That sort of thing. And I said, Trevor's fine. Pop us into a van over to the seaplane terminal, Wi-Fi. They get us all set up, and they get us set up with a Wi-Fi that just then works in the St. Regis Lounge, which had only been open for 7 months and was very comfortable. Gave us breakfast. They had a kids' room. We couldn't get our daughter out of it. We had a personalized welcome video from our butler.
Wow, fancy.
Yeah.
Video production even, huh?
Yeah, exactly. They took a photo of us in the lounge, which I think was a strategic way for them to be able to, convey how to know who we are to the staff at the island.
I can just imagine a wall with your picture on it, for the staff. Like,
Oof.
This guy, Trevor,
I almost felt like it was probably more like NCIS, like when they're like, have you seen this person or this person
like
on the tablet?
FBI's most wanted, like that's what it's kind of like, right? A bunch of mugshots.
Way to class up the experience.
Hey, it's back a house. You're not supposed to see it. It's back a house.
So the flight was actually one of the longer flights. We had crossed time zones. We were in Bangladesh time zone on this seaplane. 13 passengers, 2 cockpit crew, flight attendant, and then one other pilot was as a passenger.
So they must have had more than one stop then. Did you actually have 13 people on board?
Yeah, and I think we were even more full on the way back, but maybe only by 1 or 2. But they do stop at another, it's not really an island, it's effectively a barge or like a floating dock. And then a boat comes to it is the second stop. But
that was my experience, I think, at the Conrad. I think we did a seaplane to like kind of like a dock area, and then the boat comes out and takes you from there.
They flew around the island like 3 or 4 times. So I got some really great photos of the resort. Despite it being a fairly small island. I mean, I rode around the island in, I don't know, like 5 minutes. I could do a lap around the island on a bike. But like they have a little seaplane dock, and they had probably 10 or 15 staff there waving, welcoming us. We were welcomed by name by our butler.
So for those of you I'm just envisioning Fantasy Island, I don't know. I guess some people who are a little younger may not know what that is, but that's what I'm channeling when you tell that story.
This felt like White Lotus, like the first season of White Lotus.
Okay, fine. White Lotus sounds good too. Okay, that's about right.
That was the kind of experience. I mean, they quickly whisked us up to a nice little area to sit. They had coconuts for us. They had somebody from the kids club that gave our daughter a gift that was a nice little bag, which we ended up using the entire week for her stuff, as well as a nice little stuffed whale. And we learned that they had babysitting services, so we were very excited about that.
I've got to say, that is probably the number one, highest, what do you call it, return on investment amenity that a 5-star hotel can do is a stuffed animal. How much does that really cost them? It probably costs them nothing, but it's just everybody talks about it. I know a lot of 5-star hotels. They'll wheel out like a little radio flyer with a whole bunch of teddy bears or something. Pick one of these. Those are the types of things that you hear about all the time. But it's probably one of those things that doesn't necessarily cost them a ton to do, but they do it, and everybody talks about it.
There's no question. I mean, the stuffed animals, probably very low cost for great impact. I mean, our daughter has stuffed animals from the Park Hyatt Vendôme, Paris, Zurich. She's a stuffed panda from the Park Hyatt DC. Each of these stuffed animals, sometimes she sleeps with them. She kind of rotates them in. They all have a special place in her heart. I bet you that as she gets older, when she's able to read what they say, she's going to be like, oh, I got this from here. And then she'll kind of associate those experiences, because I know we'll go back because of how they treated us. And again, the keepsakes.
Yeah, no, it's smart. It's smart for a 5-star hotel to offer those things. And, you're right. They become cherished keepsakes going forward. And, that's the best kind of advertising.
It really is. Yeah. So even the GM was there, again, addressed us by name. I was pretty impressed with that. For all the really nice hotels that I've stayed at, it's not often that the GM is there right at the beginning of your stay.
I would actually say that that's actually for the Maldives. I think that's pretty common.
And that's a fair point.
I would say and again, I've had some experiences not at the St. Regis. I've been to the Park Hyatt, I've been to the Conrad, and I think both instances, I definitely did meet the GM in both cases. So.
Yeah. So after we had a little bit of that coconut and everybody sort of, welcomed us and everything, we got whisked into a golf cart and down to our overwater villa. We booked that for $88,000 a night for 5 nights, 5th night free. So I think that was like $68,000 per night. It was probably my best redemption that I've ever made, just based on the enjoyment we got out of this overwater
So
villa.
the value extracted from points is really good.
Yeah, especially for Marriott points. I mean,
Yes.
when I looked, and I usually try not to use the look when you're like there or just before you get there as a definitive dollar value, but it was about $2,500 a night. Now, I looked in October and it was like $3,400 a night. So I don't know. I'm assuming that it's somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 a night for this overwater villa with a pool. And that pool was clutch because our daughter just wants to swim all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we swam 2-3 times a day in our overwater villa pool, which was just clutch. But our butler kind of introduces us to the room, shows us around before we've even seen the porch deck. We'll call it a deck. Our daughter took to him and even let him hold her and kind of show her the pool.
Wow, and your daughter is she's a pretty picky person in terms of who she opens up to as for people, isn't she?
She is. And so like here, we're like, okay, number one, we're already floored with this arrival experience. And now our daughter's, taken to you. This is awesomeness. And that night we ended up at dinner. She took to one of the servers. And that server happened to be where we ate dinner was the same place where we had breakfast every day. And she saw that server every day and she'd go for a walk with her. She'd let her carry her. Like these are things that we've never seen out of our daughter. I mean, it's hard enough to get her to let you carry her.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like to find a just stranger, I guess it's a compliment to the staff there. But, I will tell you that, one of the things that comes with kind of these, Maldives vacations is you're kind of this captive audience on this small, island. The only people there are the people who are staffing the hotel and the guests. And they're usually not huge numbers of people. There's a small number of villas, usually at each of these resorts. And, so it's not uncommon to have the same server every night or every morning and night of your, 5-night stay. It's not uncommon to have the same staff interact with you over and over and over again during that trip, which is, again, part of some of the charm. I think it's probably adds to why you felt this Maldives vacation was kind of special.
It really did. And the thing that cracked me up, though, was they had to have had a bunch of rooms. I didn't get a count of how many rooms they had. They had like the Caroline Astor Estate, which was probably like a 3 or 4 bedroom compound, it felt like, on land. They had some villas or tree houses that were, inland with no water or beach access. They had some beach villas. They had 2 different piers. We were on the biggest of the piers, which was actually kind of nice. We were over by the John Jacob Astor Estate. I actually happened to just chat up one of the room attendants, and he gave us a tour, which was incredible. I mean, they have literally 2 king suites, pool, obviously. They have like a beach on their deck. I know that sounds weird. It's like not a beach into the water, but like, a bunch of sand. If you like to have your feet in the sand, you could do that in your John Jacob Astor Estate. And they gave us bikes. So like I rode around the island a few times each day. You just didn't realize how many rooms there were. You never knew that there were that many people there until Tuesday night, which was our third to last night or second to last night, where we had done this. We'd gotten this grill experience. Didn't work out for us the way we wanted it. They were going to do it on the beach, but because of weather, they had to do it in Alba, which is the restaurant where they do breakfast and some dinners. We ended up eating there most of our nights because we loved the staff there. And they do a manager's reception beforehand. That was the first time, and we'd already been there. So we got in there on Saturday, and it's Tuesday night. And that's the first time that we actually had an understanding of how many people were on this island.
Well, that's not surprising, though. That's kind of standard. I mean, they designed those places. The architecture of those places are designed so you're not seeing your neighbors. You don't know the scale of the place. I mean, the whole idea is to kind of make it that kind of private retreat, right? I mean, that's kind of what they envision from start to finish.
See, you make it sound like this is all meh, meh, meh. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible.
Look, I'm not trying to minimize it, but I'm trying to explain to you that it is part of the recipe that is a Maldives vacation.
And I totally get it. I mean, and it's the small little things. The fact that, so many of the staff, even though we had not really had many interactions with like the other butlers, other than the occasional ride when they just happen to be going by, hey, you want to ride? You know what? Sure. Why not? As I was carrying our daughter, they have the whale bar where they do the traditional sabering. This is a little bit different the way they do the sabering, though. So all the butlers have like this procession. One comes out with a saber, one comes out with a bottle, and they actually tie the cork to the bottle so that they're not throwing a cork into the
Oh, they're
Indian
trying to
Ocean.
be environmentally conscious, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it's biodegradable. Isn't cork biodegradable? I don't know. Anyway.
Well, you got the glass, you got the cork, and
Oh,
the
all
other
right, fine.
because of the ribbon that they tie it with, it also makes it easier because you're in some cases, like we were probably a good 20 feet away from where they did the sabering. And so you don't see the cork go, but you see the ribbon that is holding the cork.
We can see where it's going. But by the way, we should just interject here in a second and then just mention that this was a St. Regis, and St. Regis does have this tradition. I've probably experienced this tradition with you now, at least 3 or 4 times at different St. Regises around the world. But that is actually pretty brand standard for them to do a champagne saber ceremony in the evening at St. Regis. That we've had that pretty common now, or at least it seems to be the brand standard across the chain.
Except that they didn't give anybody glasses of it. They didn't give anybody.
Oh, really?
They literally
Surprising.
sabered it. I think somebody that I talked to said that maybe they sell that bottle to whoever wants to buy it.
Oh, okay.
Versus the samples. I would never buy that bottle, by the way, having had it, as we have. The problem is that they prep the bottle, as most people do, is you prep the bottle with the neck in the ice. What that means is that the rest of the bottle,
all the sediment is kind of coming down that way, doesn't it?
no, it's not the sediment. It's the fact that the body of the bottle is not as cold. And so I like my champagne particularly cold. The neck is the coldest
This is
part.
another particular peccadillo of our friend Trevor here. He is a stickler for temperature of sparkling wine and champagne.
Yes, yeah. But by putting the neck of the bottle in the bottom of the ice bucket, it makes the glass more brittle and makes it easier to saber.
Yep,
it just means that the experience of the bottle, if that's your strategy. When I saber, what I do is I just put the neck of the bottle in the back of the fridge.
Maybe that's why they don't want to serve that champagne. Maybe they're like, oh, well, our guests would be, upset by the temperature of this champagne, in order to be able to savor it correctly here in the tropics.
Could be. Yeah, but I mean, the overall experience was just the attention to detail and everything. I just was overwhelmed with.
I mean, so far I'm hearing a lot of like kind of the amazing aspects of the St. Regis, but I think one of the other things you really, I think, probably need to relay to our listeners is, what are the other, kind of special things about the Maldives itself? Like, I think there's something about the environment, wouldn't you say?
That's true. So, and what I've read is the Maldives doesn't have the most amazing reef, but I had the chance, we saw some eagle rays. I had the chance to snorkel with black-tip sharks. Just beautiful, beautiful fish. I am not a fish person. I am not a diver. So I pretty much just threw on, they give you life jackets, they give you the snorkeling gear. And could I have done the snorkeling without a life jacket? Yeah, probably, but I was feeling lazy. I'm on vacation. And I just found that I was just swimming and looking at all these beautiful, beautiful fish. And it was just peaceful. I mean, you forget that there's any world out there when you've got your face in the water and you're just, you got the snorkel going and you're just putting away.
What you've just mentioned there is probably one of the most essential parts of a Maldives vacation, because it's that convenience to just literally just wake up, walk off your, overwater villa, put on snorkels, put on a life jacket, and then immediately you're communing with, aqua life and, getting to see beautiful fish. And that is part of the uniqueness, because I don't know that you're going to get that in the Caribbean or in Hawaii. Probably the only place which I have not yet been to that you could probably compare it to is maybe like Tahiti or something like that.
Bora Bora, I think.
Bora Bora, yeah, exactly. That might be where you might be able to replicate. But even then, Bora Bora has a slightly different environment, and the ocean looks a little different because you got kind of this lagoon, island thing happening over there. Whereas, the Maldives really has that kind of pristine white sand. There are different types of reefs and such, but one of these resorts, these island resorts, are kind of isolated unto themselves and have some kind of reef to speak of, because that's generally how they're created, right? And there are always these atolls, right, where they have these reefs. So that's pretty common and almost necessary for most of these resorts to have something like that.
Yeah, and there are not enough words in the alphabet, at least that I know, in the English language to convey just how pristine that water is, and just how just being able to look down for tens of feet. I didn't go as far as I probably
the most that you've ever experienced, because you go to these other places, other beaches and things like that. You don't have that visibility and that clarity usually, because you're right there in the open ocean essentially.
The only other place I had this experience was in the Seychelles. And
got it. Which would make sense.
And to be honest with you, this felt so much better than the Seychelles. I felt like the Seychelles was just sort of, I was an intruder. It just didn't
Right, right.
feel natural. Whereas everything about the St. Regis experience just felt like we belonged there. We were comfortable. We were welcomed. The food was great. The staff was incredible. Really funny experience. I think it was Sunday or Monday. We had just dropped our daughter off at the babysitter at the kids club.
Mhm.
And we ended up having to go back because she wasn't settling. By the time we got there, she was settled. And so we said, okay, well, let's just sneak over to the bar, the beach bar, and grab a drink. If she unsettles, we're only, a couple of minutes walk away. So we sit down at the bar, order a nice bottle of champagne, and 2 or 3 seats down the bar, somebody leans forward and looks right at me and says, "Is your name Trevor?" Wouldn't you know, it's Raven Maven, who's in this group, who is Milonomic's Patreon member. And so we had hung out. She had attended a reselling do that we had done many years ago in Maryland. And so it was just fun to be able to chat with a friend. This shouldn't be surprising for
It
those
should
in
not
our
be. It
community,
should not be. It should not be. I
but
would
I
say
was
if
still pretty
there was
surprised.
well, if there was a Mecca, for miles and points enthusiasts, wouldn't one of those areas be the Maldives? I would think so. I've definitely met people in the Maldives that are now friends of mine that I didn't know before going there, and these are like miles and points people. So that is not that surprising to me at all, by the way.
Like, I shouldn't have been surprised, but I just, you feel like you're so remote that you lull yourself into that comfortable, like, yeah, we are just so far away from everybody.
I'm
This
not
is,
surprised, but I
oh
love
man.
hearing the anecdote. The anecdote is great. It doesn't shock me. What it does, it confirms my pre-existing notions of the Maldives.
Yeah. Like, I mean, everything about the experience just blew me away. I mean, our butler, Hussein, even offered to like unpack our suitcases. Not that we let him, but like, I mean, I'm not used to that kind of
Right.
experience. I'm not used to anybody even offering that.
I
Like,
like your,
I'm just happy that they deliver the bags to the room.
I like your word choice because you said it blew you away. Does that include the bill for your food? There's a reason why I called 5-star famine.
Yeah, this was an interesting thing for us, right? So the hotel offered if you spend $300 or if you commit to $300 a day, you get $50 more per day. So we ended up committing to $1,500 in food and beverage. That didn't include the 25% service and taxes. So needless to say, we ended up spending that $1,750 for the 5 days and then some. And that didn't even include the grill experience, which was $495 for the two of us, which we
Yep.
prepaid to be able to get, I think it was like a $50 or $100 discount.
I would say that's pretty customary. I mean, like I've been there before for 4 or 5 days, and what you paid for food and beverage doesn't sound too off base of what I might have paid back then. And it's just one of the things. Just that is the one aspect of a Maldives vacation. Just realize it's going to be expensive. I mean, even if you get the rooms for free, you still have to pay for the transfers, and the food there is expensive. Even if you do get maybe free breakfast, and you can kind of calibrate yourself to maybe doing 2 meals a day, just the one free breakfast and one other meal.
And we were planning to do that. I mean, we brought oatmeal, we brought all this stuff. I don't know if it was because our daughter's under 2. They didn't charge us for any meals that she had. So we got like fruit for her at lunch.
Kids for
We
free.
got dinner for her. She had ice cream. I mean, we paid $8 a scoop for ice cream. She got ice cream for free. And we didn't want to be like those people that were trying to mooch and try to, hey, order that for the baby and, we'll have a bite or two here or there. We tried not to do that. I mean, obviously it happens just because, it happens. But we had brought oatmeal. We thought we were going to kind of try to minimize and stuff. And we were there and we're like, we've traveled halfway around the world. Let's just enjoy ourselves. And the food was very good, even though it was pricey. I mean, it was like $45, $55 for a pizza, plus the 25%. It was a lot, but that's what we do this for, right? I mean, that's why we're trying to generate miles, points, and cash back. And so instead of stressing about it, we just said, you know what, we're probably going to blow our budget, but when are we going to get back here?
I think you're doing it the right way. I mean, like I said, I called 5-star famine, and I did plan, and I did minimize, but I also did, the several $100, beach barbecue type thing, which is pretty common at all these resorts. they all have this like, special night where, oh, this is the grill night or whatever, and you're supposed to, participate or whatever. But
And there's
it's worth
some
doing. It's
camaraderie
worth
with
doing.
that.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't say don't do it. I just say, that I might not do it. Well, first you can't do it every night, but you can also, if you're going to be there for a while, you can calibrate a little and be like, maybe this night we will do this, and then maybe this night we'll do that. And the other thing that I recall from being in Maldives is, sometimes it's even more economical just to order room service rather than dine out. Like those are the type of things that you might change or calibrate because of your location that might make more sense. Where in most places that doesn't.
Yeah, and totally get that. I mean, we wanted the dining experience, and part of that dining experience for us was the fact that the servers really got along well with, or our daughter really got along well with the servers. And so it wasn't uncommon for us. There was a South African rosé, and I just lost the name of it in my head. I didn't even put it in our notes. But there was a South African rosé that was, I thought, an affordable price. We'd order a bottle each night, and our daughter would, usually gives us 2 hours. We ended up having 2.5-hour meals on average, breakfast and dinner. And part of that was the server would sometimes take her for a walk or that sort of thing. And so, by having the meal in the restaurant, we were getting the better experience because we were able to sit, relax, talk, have a glass of wine, and just, enjoy the overall experience. And so we really embraced it. Like I said, we went over budget, but I think I have no regrets in doing that. So I didn't put together a guest affair, but I wanted to just do a little bit of a guest affair just because we're talking Maldives and seaplane. Now, you've got much more experience than I do, but I have seen like 5 or 6 or 7 different data points.
What, for the actual seaplane transfer?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to ask, what do you think the seaplane transfer was to the Maldives? It's a 45-minute seaplane flight. They stop at the St. Regis first, not to the Maldives, to the St. Regis. Then they stop at another quote-unquote airport, and then they fly right back to Malé.
I'd say per person, I'm going to go ahead and guess $600.
$800.
Whoa, okay, that's more than I thought. Whoa.
Yeah, it was steep, but we didn't have to pay for our daughter. So for us, that was an even bigger reason. And like I said, we booked right into the overwater villa, whereas I think the Park Hyatt plays games that you've got to pay cash in addition to like 30 or 40,000 points. And I didn't want to deal with that. I wanted to book the room I wanted. Just jumping back. But
yeah, I've been to the Park Hyatt a couple times, and we did stay in the Overwater Villa once. We played the game. We paid the extra money, and we got upgraded into the Overwater Villa. But, I'll be honest, I didn't have too much of a problem with the land villas either. Specifically, the Park Hyatt, at least at the time we went, and I don't know if they fixed this since then, but one of the things I disliked about the overwater villas was the air conditioning was not quite as good, because the logistics of having to cool that building out over the water where it's exposed to wind and high temperatures. So I think when we were there, the air temperatures were pretty high. They were in the 90s or something like that, and the room had a hard time keeping up with the cooling of the facility. And I'll be honest, the land villas there, the beach villas, I think they did have beach access. They had plunge pools. I thought I was fine with the non, but I definitely understand the need to or want to try or experience the overwater villa. I just point out that it's, if you don't want to pay for it, or you can always give it a shot, try one of the non-overwater villas and see if it's okay for you. Because quite honestly, for me, I'm okay with some of the non-overwater villas. The snorkeling's still pretty good right off the beach.
I just felt like we're going all that way. I want the penultimate, I want the example of what a Maldivian experience is. An overwater villa was that for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. I don't want to take away from the overwater villa, but I would say know that it's not always going to be, it's not always going to be worth the extra cost, if there is an extra cost. And as an opinion,
Totally agree. And I remember Summer Hull at one point saying that she actually preferred the beach villa over the overwater at the Park Hyatt. Summer Hull of Mommy Points, now the Points guy. Yeah,
I think I would probably echo her opinion. Yeah, I think I'd probably share that opinion. So, Trevor, I think that's a pretty good deep dive into your Maldivian adventure. It sounds like we're probably ready to close out this episode.
Sounds good. For the Korean Navy Admiral and myself, the newest Maldives fanboy, at least in our community, this has been the Travel Stories podcast. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to step up your miles and points game, consider becoming a Milenomics Patreon member. Until next time, hope your next story is a travel story.